Paulette comes to us from Key Leadership Initiatives, and she is an expert in executive and organizational leadership and development. She has a successful executive coaching, executive development, and leadership team development practice, and has helped organizations and individuals accelerate their capacity for strategic alignment, development, self-renewal, and continuous learning. With experience in pharmaceuticals, retail, financial services, Paulette's work has been characterized as helping to solve complex problems while not getting caught up in complex processes. The capability for leaders to develop a performance-oriented culture and engage employees in healthy commitment to business goals is a hallmark of her work. Entrepreneurial roots have contributed to Paulette's practical and value-conscious approach to achieving results. Innovation and effective problem-solving, combined with the ability to size up and respond to issues quickly and effectively, have been cornerstones of Paulette's internal and external consulting work. At Wyeth Pharmaceuticals, Paulette was recruited to be a change agent and consultant to the headquarters executive team. After success in that role, she was asked to take on a global change initiative, transforming Wyeth from a holding company culture to a health services culture. At Fleet Credit Card Services, as a strategic member of the executive team, she led major change initiatives as the company was bought by Fleet Financial Group, and she was able to provide stability and credibility at a very difficult juncture in the organization's growth. At Manchester, with key responsibilities for business development, including the design of organizational and managerial development and change initiatives for key clients, her client relationships were characterized by a great degree of trust and credibility. At Mars Inc., a strong manufacturing company, as a result of being promoted quickly, Paulette enjoyed staff and line assignments in several of the companies that are part of Mars Inc.'s umbrella. Because Mars is privately held, the entrepreneurial climate necessitates that HR professionals act decisively as a business person first and HR manager second. Paulette established the foundation for business partnering early. While there, Paulette worked in a global climate for a very large company with a high-powered management team. I am happy and very excited to welcome Paulette Gabriel today.
So much.
Thanks, Paulette.
Thank you. I'm so happy that I'm here tonight because I loved Ariane. I loved her. And I did something contrary to what we actually discussed, but as you would expect. In that, I took a little different view of subject matter. And it's really more in line with what we just talked about than maybe the classic, how do you do a job? And then how do you be philanthropic, and separating those two. So I want this to be a casual, obviously, a casual dialogue. But I do have a few things I would like to share with you. Let me start by saying, I love this quote. It's from a guy who's written a lot of things about change. What he's talking about for you as individuals, is that this new era demands more rapid responses, that immediate adaptability is key, fast results, and that your personal growth track has to keep up with the pace of change. So the thing about that's really important in terms of what Ariane said, and also what I'm going to say, is that investing in yourself and keeping the pace of that investment up is the most fundamental thing you can do. There's a guy who wrote a book called What I Learned While Editing My Life. His name's Donald Miller. And what he said is, we were designed to live through something in order to change. And the one thing that we were destined to live through is the thing that was meant to change us. And I love that quote. because I know you're at this crossroads and juncture facing a sort of chaotic, unknown world. And I just want to say, to sort of underscore what Ariane said, you'll be in the right place at the right time to do the right thing. And then finally, I just want to say that I love that Hilary Swank is taking on roles of very interesting women who, as someone in the New York Times said recently, dance to the music that they compose. So I'm going to run true to what Ariane said, and in some cases a little bit contrary. So one contrary point that I want to make is that the corporate world is about sameness. And oftentimes satisfaction is about finding individuality and difference. And those two can be at odds with one another at times, and you will feel that. When I think about philanthropy and being philanthropic, my thesis for today's discussion and communication, and I don't want to say speech, but dialogue, is really that it's impossible to be philanthropic unless you're integrated. Because if you're not, then the philanthropic aspects of what you try to accomplish in your work, in your avocation, in your part-time stuff, become more about personal achievement than about the gifts that you bring. So for me, I mean, the big secret, the big oddball secret that I know is that if you want to be philanthropic, don't do it on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. Do it every minute of every day that you're working. And it is possible to do that. And so what I love about what Ariane said is she sort of set the framework for what the what is. And what I'm going to talk about is how to actually do it. So I hope that I give you some practical tips on making your world come alive with the gifts that you bring and the ones you want to give as well. So with that, I'd like to jump in. Now, I want to make sure that you're not disappointed that I'm not talking about how to get on boards and that sort of thing. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right, good. Because I can talk about that, but I thought, I tried to put myself in your shoes. What would I want to hear about? The other thing I didn't do, just because I think this way, and I also wanted to make a point, was I started out, I honestly did, doing a PowerPoint presentation. And then I said to myself, that's stupid. You're telling them to be authentic, and the truth of the matter is, that's not the way you think. So, in terms of introduction, I thought I would start where I'm. One second, where I started. So, with that in mind, I'll tell you a little bit about what you already know, which is that this is my career in PowerPoint. That's it. You heard it already. So I have a BS. I have all the way through all these jobs. Big jobs, great jobs, fun jobs, worldwide jobs. And now I have my own company. And I finished my dissertation and doctorate about 2 years ago. So it's kind of like, yeah, okay, that's good. Really, I mean, that's success, don't you think? Well, here's my real job. Here's my real life. More like this. And I'll just run you through that real quick. So, if you look at the top of this, what you'll see is that my life started out, grew up really poor. That's at the top. And I grew up, the children, my brothers and sister and I, were children of people who immigrated to this country. They didn't speak English. English wasn't actually spoken in my house for a really long time. Because the house was so dysfunctional, I decided I would join the Y because I didn't want to be at home. So I went to the Y every single day of my life, every day, from after school until 7 or 8 at night. And I became a jock from that. And so that was pretty cool. I mean, I liked it. It sort of did what it was supposed to do, make me strong and make me away and make me sane. However, the main thing that came out of that was I found one of my passions was ice skating. And I'm Lebanese by background, and there's no ice in Lebanon. So for me, sort of like what Ariane was saying, that was contrary to everything my parents knew, understood. So what I would do is I would sneak out to go every night. And I skated every night, and I ended up winning championships in figure skating. And that was really hard because I didn't have any money, I didn't have any uniforms, I didn't have any coaches. I had to hook rides from other people. So it was one of those points in life where I came to understand that my passions run deep and that I would have to act on them in order to be a happy person. What came out of that is that one of the main things that came out of that ice skating experience, yes, I'd like to tell you that it strengthened me and it built character, and it certainly did. But one of the real main things that came out of that for me was I understood that for me, a winning combination was the combination of being creative and being disciplined both. Because with ice skating, you have to be both. And that's what came out of it. And if you think about my work and what I do today, that's all it is. So from there, I sort of moved through school. I decided I was going to go for my doctorate. I did that. And this is more the real story of my life. So what I want to say about that and the PowerPoint is that one of the key theses that I have is that when you look at your life and when you look back on your life, it's going to look different retrospectively than it does when you're sitting in the middle of it. I had a professor at GW who was 80 years old. He was a great guy. He knew a lot of stuff. And one of the things he reminded me of and shared with us was that, history sounds so ordered. It was a mess. It was a mess. It was a total mess. So when you're in the middle of your stuff and your confusion and your disappointments and your rejections and your joys, and you're thinking, how the heck am I going to, what does this all mean? Don't worry about it. It will have meaning retrospectively. So that's kind of one of my theses. The second one is that what I had mentioned to you earlier about being integrative, and being integrative with a higher purpose. That's key as well. The third thesis that I have is that, well, I'll tell you this story because I love Apple as a company. And I think Apple as a company really frames things in that mix of spiritual, philanthropic, business in the right way. The thing about Apple is they didn't invent the personal computer, but they came from behind on the Mac. They didn't invent the MP3 player, but they came from behind on that to do something unbelievable. They didn't invent phones, and I wouldn't be with that. I have 2 phones because I'm not giving up my iPhone for anything. And the lesson in Apple and the connection to philanthropic causes, your heart and business, because that's where most of us are going to work, is in the business environment, is that when you begin to think about touching your customers in an enduring way, the way Apple does, there's no finer work on the planet. There's no finer work. So I guess I'm one of those business people that loves business. I love nonprofits, and I love that people can achieve their higher purpose in either setting. And that would include you. So if you're turned off to business, then one of the things that I want you to consider is being turned on again by it. Okay, so I have some tips for you. I'm going to make this quick because we were on a little bit of a short schedule, and I want to leave time for us to just talk. Plus, you've heard some of this already, which makes me very, very happy. So, the thing is, don't look for a job. Don't look for a job. If you're going to do something great. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is, but do something great. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you position yourself to really live your purpose from the second you step out of this place? Which can be hard. You've heard the rules, pay dues, and all that stuff. Got to pay some dues? Pay your dues in a way that helps you grow every single day. First, find out who you are over and over again. What that really speaks to is understanding where your happiness lies. So, I will tell you that nothing is happier than college. But there is happiness outside of college as well. And one of your key roles, the investment you need to make, is what makes you happy. How do you go about doing that? Pick out the 5 times in your life, 5 times, that you've been the happiest. And start to analyze why. Who was there? What happened? What was the result? What were the contributions? What were the things that made you happy? Write those all down. And then pull away from it and take a helicopter view. What do all those things share? And think about, you've got to have that in your job. Because if you don't, it's just not going to work for you. Step outside of achievement. Now this might sound anti-business, but it's really not. Carol Dweck is somebody who, she's an education specialist. She's a researcher, she's an academic, she's a scholar, she's written 1 million books. She's fantastic. If you plan on having kids, read Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck's work is a 20-year, 30-year study. And she studied kids that focused on achievement versus kids that focused on learning. And which ones over time were more successful, like the marshmallow thing. Which ones were more successful over time? And what she found is the kids that were focused on achievement were not as successful as the people that were focused on learning. And so when you begin to think about your checkoff list and what's important, think about those experiences that will give you the most learning, because that ultimately will lead to your success, not the achievement side. And I do realize that in some ways, that's a 180-degree turn on everything we've ever been taught through school and everything else. But it's not really. So if it's not achievement, I want to come back to that in a minute. And then shed your old skin. People that are really smart have the capacity to say, this is the framework that I grew up in, all the assumptions, your parents, etc. And you know what? I'm going to put that aside and take it, not throw it away. Just put it aside and take another view. So find out who you are. Figure out what makes you happy. Think about the kinds of things that make you feel that you've accomplished, not achieved. And there's a difference. And shed your old skin if you need to. Become adept at that. Second point, become who you were meant to be. You've heard this already. Listen to that inner voice. Now, I have to ask you a question. Are you conscious of your inner voice? Are you?
I think once in my life.
Mm-hmm. You know what? I work with executives who are in their 40s, 50s, and sometimes 60s who have no clue. They have no clue. And so part of my work with them is to begin to help them quiet and listen, and what does it really mean, and analyze it. The sooner you start to listen to that voice, the better you are. And how do you do that? You just tune in. You don't ignore it. It's there for you. So listen to your inner voice. Break free of what holds you back. I love the idea of you escaping your mental prisons. And what we mean by that is we all grew up with restrictions and constraints and assumptions that diminish who we are and our authenticity and what we bring to the table. Viktor Frankl wrote that book, The Meaning of Life, and he's written some other stuff. And one of the things that was derived from that is how do you do that? How do you get rid of some of the assumptions that have strangled you through time and create your own footprint? 4 questions. Think back. Ask yourself, and he calls it existential digging. And so the 4 questions are: 1, how did you respond to a given situation? 2, how'd you feel about it? What'd you learn from it, and how did you grow? If you ask yourself those 4 questions for key points in your life, then you'll begin to understand what has supported you and what has held you back. I know for me, way back in 8th grade, I didn't make cheerleading. And it pissed me off because I was a jock. I was a good cheerleader, but not the right image for it. And that took me in a bad direction about what I wasn't capable of for a very long time. And so I say to you, don't repeat my mistake. Ask yourself these existential questions that have meaning for you. And then make it real. I want to talk about this briefly. I did the most fascinating, my study, unlike a lot of academics, was so interesting. I was getting a divorce. I worked at Wyeth. I was in charge of the global transformation company. I won't say his name on film. And what I recognized was, as I was going through all these changes with my divorce, the company was mirroring exact changes that I was going through on a personal level, and I thought to myself, there was something to that. There has to be something there. So my study was, tell me about the deep transformational changes you've experienced, and tell me about your leadership, and what's the connection between the two of those. What I found was that people that transform essentially through life events early were further down the transformational path, further down the leadership path, and more authentic as time went by. So when you think about being real and becoming real, it has to do with shepherding yourself through these changes that I said earlier that you were meant to have in your life to create who you are. So I'm going to jump down to the next segment. And I want to refer to this briefly because Ariane referred to it, but I want to be really clear about this. I coach 50% women, 50% men. One of the things that I see over and over again with female executives is that they are not good with conflict, they are appeasers, and they don't welcome change because conflict and change are tightly connected. So I just want to say to you, one of the key lessons I work with people on is that the best ideas come out of messes. So if you see a mess, jump in it. If you're in a mess, stay in it. Don't run away from it. And here are a few techniques to work with that. When I find, and I'm in a lot of messes, because that's what I get called in to do. When I find I'm in the middle of a mess, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not going to have I won't know what to do, and I'm talking with the CEO, and that whole thing's going on, and all I want to do is say, let's end this meeting. I stay with it, and I just say, tell me a little bit more. It gives me time to breathe. It's a technique that works to give you time to think about where you are and to recenter yourself and stay in the conflict. Don't let your fight or flight anxiety take over. So many times, what ends up happening is that people, and women in particular, are not comfortable with disruption because it's connected to anxiety. And I just want to say to you, anxiety is a signal that you're in the right place. That's all it signifies, is that you're in the right place for trying something new. You're not doing anything wrong. When I was in college, and I was right at this place that you are, and I was getting ready to graduate, facing that chaotic world, I almost had a nervous breakdown because I didn't know how to make sense of it. And the anxiety just about sent me over the edge. And if I had known what I know now, it would have been to say, use that anxiety as a guidepost and as a guardrail. But don't let it go, because it really means you're in a place where you should be. Stand outside the conflict. What that really means is that when you're in a heavy conflict or there's change going on which is related to conflict, people tend to get so embroiled in the battle or the accommodation that they just lose sight of their ability to stand right outside of it and take a helicopter view and say what's really going on. So stand outside the conflict. This is my favorite thing, the next one. Go where you don't want to go. This is really a time in your life where you can catch yourself off guard and see what happens. I mean, what's the risk? You go to New York, you don't like it. So what? You go to London, you don't like it. Big deal. You go to Africa and you don't like it. So what? This is the time when you should do that and should be doing that. Every career has 3 phases: the promise phase, the momentum phase, and the harvest phase. You're going to be in the promise phase. So the promise phase is where you're, as an independent contributor, you're kicking butt and taking names and delivering. That's what happens in the promise phase. Then people make the assumption that in the momentum phase you're going to be able to do that with others. Doesn't always happen. Because you have to keep the learning channels open all the way through the promise phase and not rely on the same things that have made you successful to keep you successful. That's why this is really key, and it's my favorite. Now's the time to catch yourself off guard. Go where you don't want to go. Take some risks. And obviously with risk comes failure. So sidle up to rejection, failure, sadness, depression, anxiety. All those things that everybody takes lots of drugs for and sees lots of shrinks for, they're part of our life. And so if you're unwilling to feel those things, you're unwilling to be successful. That's the bottom line on that. I love the idea of the lizard brain. The lizard brain is something we all have. It's the thing that's been in all of us since forever. And what it really speaks to is our mechanisms for self-protection that have to do with, if you're a lizard, you sort of get into this whole thing when there's a tiger that's going to come down and eat you. But that's not the story of our lives. I mean, we don't have those kinds of threats now. But we still have the lizard brain. So when you cause trouble for yourself, you have to think about how the lizard brain is either constraining you or not. When you push yourself to grow, understand that you're taking your habits of life and smacking them in the face. So it's going to feel a little bit painful. And that resistance is that con artist that tells you not to do something. And that's all that it is. It's part and parcel of the process of getting to the other side. All right. Speaking of, I'm going to the other side. Okay, hold on. Here's where I want to talk about philanthropy. Because those are my dogs. And when I really want to focus on what's important in leadership, I think about my dogs. They are so unconditionally loving and responsive, and therefore so am I. So the idea of buying into benevolence, you'll see a lot of ego-centered, aggressive, competitive leaders who, when you use the word benevolent, will say, "Are you crazy? This is a business we're running." The problem is, and the opportunity is, that it's a business that's run by people. And people work best when there's high alignment and high trust. So that 4-box matrix, upper right-hand corner, represents the high and the high on alignment and trust. So when people trust you and are trusted, and when they understand what the goals are, and you do too, you're sharing those with them, then you have the opportunity to be philanthropic in your leadership in a way that's giving every single minute of the day. So for me, this is the model that I use for leaders. I use the words benevolent. I push the envelope on that. And we talk a lot about what it means to be a benevolent leader. One second. And unfortunately, you can't see that very well. But the main thing about benevolence and trust and alignment is, if you're living with integrity every minute, then you're halfway there. Leading by example. In the study that I did, 90% of the people said that some of the most transformational things in their lives had to do with role models and examples. So leading by example. Being a great listener, delegating, holding people accountable, this high alignment, high trust model. If you take nothing away from this, take this model, and I can send it to you, because it's the key thing that will help evolve your leadership to a point where people will actually follow you. Easy to say, very hard to do. I want to talk about this. Building a house of belonging is not the same as corporate engagement. Building a house of belonging has to do with the things that Ariane described at the end of her speech. She said 4 or 5 things about safety, honesty, trust, and exchange, communication. Building a house of belonging has to do with pulling people together, top right again, to collaborate with you in terms of them bringing their accountability to the table, and you're being able to energize them with the possibilities so that they are part of that new future that people are building together. That's what I mean by a house of belonging. When people are invested in the new future, they're part of the community, and you don't have to force the accountability. You're going to run into people that are going to say to you, so, tell me, Ms. Job Interviewer, interviewee, what is it that you believe is important in leaders? And one of the things that you could say with honesty, with integrity, and that will have enduring value is that you can't force accountability. You have to earn it. And so as a leader, that's one of my goals. So the idea of building a community where people are restored rather than controlled is a key factor in creating everyday philanthropic perspective. I'm not going to talk a lot about this because we have to end in just about a minute. But I use these words intentionally. Build a chain with intention and grace. What that really translates to is have a network, except I don't want to say to you have a network, because that implies Outlook, contacts, 15 dozen of them, and you have to call them on a regular basis. I'm saying bring to the table grace and dignity around connecting with people about what's important to you. And I wanted to end with an exercise today, but I think we don't have time, so.
We have 3 minutes.
All right, in that case, could you pair up with each other? To, partner up with someone? Okay. So, here's the deal. What I want you to do is talk to each other, and I want you to talk about 3 things. 3 things that you do that are effective and satisfying. Why satisfying? Because that's the accomplishment part, not the achievement part. Effective and satisfying. 3 things I do that are effective and satisfying. 2, one of the most important days in my life has been. 3, one thing I can do in the next 30 days to advance on what's important to me. That's the 3rd thing. Okay? Are you good with that?
Sure.
All right. So you have about 2 minutes to do that, which means you only have 1 minute to share.
Okay.
We could probably push it to 90 seconds.
Yeah.
But so, go ahead, and then I'll call you back at the end,
Do you
and
want
we'll
to
talk about it. What do you think?
I'll start. I don't mind.
You want to just do it as a foursome? All right.
Okay, I'll start. Oh, 3 things. That's a lot. Okay.
Up to 3. You can talk about 3.
So I think I am an effective communicator. I like to speak to a lot of different people and connect with people that may be the same or somewhat different from me. So I think that goes along with networking and meeting people in general and sort of building sort of connections to move forward. And it's also very satisfying to me. I feel like a thrill when I'm talking to people and connecting with them and having things in common with them and telling them about things that I've done and learning from them also. So I think it's effective and satisfying. One of the most important days, I guess recently, a few weeks ago, I signed for a full-time job, so that was a very important day for me.
Great.
And one thing in the next 30 days to advance on what is also important is, now that I've worked so hard at Villanova, being a senior, having a job, I would like to have some fun and
Fun is
spend time with my
important.
friends before we sort of move a little bit of our separate ways after graduation, and sort of find the things that I may not have had a lot of time to do in the past few months and to do them. So
Good. That's good. Thank you. Would you like to go next, Maureen?
Well, I'm the old one of the group here. Let's see. Well, I work in career services, so
Oh, you do?
I do. So 3 things I think that I do that are effective and satisfying is connecting the right student with the right job. So I get a lot of satisfaction of them being happy with their decision and their connection. When you obviously have someone that's never stepped foot into career services before and are feeling very uncomfortable about it and putting them at ease and connecting them with the right person. Those are 2 things right there. Really quick, I'm trying to do this fast. One of the most important days in my life, of course, I have to say, is when my family got started. I have 2 children.
Nice.
And one thing I can do in the next 30 days to advance on what is important to me is, well, what I thought I would be thinking about is how I can connect more with campus ministry here on campus and bring more people to get involved at my level as opposed to the student level.
Right. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. My thing's going to be a little bit different. I'm not business, so
That's cool.
I wrote 2 things. One thing that I think I'm pretty effective at is listening. I traveled a lot as a kid, so I wanted to learn from different people, and I think it kind of helped me to grow as a person that always goes into a situation trying to find what I can take back from it. So I think that's been important and something that I'm relatively good at. And the second thing I put down was flying. Probably a little out there, but I'm a pilot, and it's one of the areas where I feel most comfortable because I've learned to trust myself, to trust my instincts, and I think it helped me build confidence in other areas of my life because first going into it I was like, oh my god, I'm going to crash. And then as I went through the process, I kind of learned a lot about myself, and it taught me how to approach my goals, how to kind of kick myself in the butt when I need to and get through it, and then, you know, ultimately come to something that I love. So that was random, but one of the most important days I put down was leaving the Navy because that was a huge life change and what I plan to do with my life, which clearly I am no longer going to. And then one thing I can do to advance what is important to me. I didn't think about that one.
30
I guess
days.
be open, really, because there's so many things that I could end up doing after college. To just be open to trying any one of those outlets, whatever seems to be the right fit right now.
Good. It should feel good.
Sorry, we're over our time.
All right.
Thank